Listen, I would love to record a super complicated intro where I'm very needlessly over the top and talking about the entire theme of this show and what it is. And nah, it's not that I'm feeling particularly lazy today. It's that it's 1:30 in the morning as of recording this and my hot water heater burst. But I wanted to record a video because I hadn't done a review in a while. So needless to say, I'm not going to be the happiest about this, but it's a review that needed to get done. Now, if you're one of the 5 people that actually watched my original episode, 1, appreciate you. 2, you already know the rules, and if you haven't, you should really go back and watch it because I explained in detail as to why I make the rules of my reviews the way they are. But to make a long story short, the bag equals the plot, the salt equals the characters, the butter equals the pros, which are the things that I like, the kernels equal the cons, the things I didn't like, and then I've wrapped the entire thing up with a summary that is labeled cook time. I give that out in minutes and seconds. 30 seconds equals 0.5, and no, I don't do no quick maths. Nothing cute, no 5 minutes and 32 seconds or nothing like that, unless it's like a complete and utter joke. You don't expect to hear that from me. And the movie I'm reviewing today is particularly interesting. It kind of has that very divisive Megan is missing fan base. There's a whole host of people who seem to be particularly keen on this film, to say the least, talking about how great it is and how much it mimics real life, and to a certain extent they're kind of true. But then there's also another section of the fan base who seems to be more people like me, who establish what's good about the movie but point out its obvious flaws. Although they never really go particularly hard on it and point out exactly how / what is bad about it. They just kind of beat around the bush and point out the really good thing about it, which does actually carry the movie. But I'm kind of rambling on, so let's actually point out what movie I'm reviewing in the first place.
I started shaking, my legs were quaking, my stomach aching, my brain was breaking.
Look Away is a 2018 psychological thriller in the same vein of Jekyll and Hyde. It's centered around a young girl named Maria who talks to her alter ego that lives behind a mirror. And you may say, well, that's really odd for you to just mention that right from the get-go. But to be honest, Maria is a very odd character, and this movie is very oddly written. She exists in a universe, much to Ben Shapiro's delight, where there are only 2 genders, abusive men and passive women. Also, Maria suffers from crippling social anxiety due to these abusive men and passive women. Also, in this world, there's no cops, no teachers, no therapists, nothing. There's nothing there. There's no other human beings beside the main characters. I mean, well, to be fair, this is America, so there probably are cops and they're just busy abusing somebody else. Whatever. I don't get political around here. But like I said, the story's centered around Maria and her alter ego that lives behind the mirror named Aram, which is just Maria backwards. Not really all that clever, but I'm not gonna crap on it too hard. After years of being wrecked by the entire world, she inevitably gives in to her alter ego behind the mirror, and then high-impact sexual violence ensues. And I know I'm making it seem blasé blah, and I'm gonna get more into exactly what I feel about this movie, but first off, we gotta deal with our cast of meat puppets.
Started turning green, feeling mean. It was like in that story. I was acting strange, quite deranged. It was pure allegory.
If you can't tell, I really have no interest in talking about the characters. I mean, they're, other than the main character, they're not really characters, much like when I did my review of The Family 8,000 years ago. A vast majority of these characters just are nobodies and nothings. They're kind of just plot conveniences, but I will say that unlike The Family, the characters actually have something to do. All of it is awful, but I'll get there when I get to the kernels. Instead, I'm just gonna run down the list of characters and speak about them as I so see fit. So our cast of characters are as follows. There's Jekyll, Jekyll, Hyde, Jekyll, Hyde, Hyde, Jekyll, 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 Hyde, Jekyll, Hyde, aging like milk Emily Lind, Dr. Jeffrey Kevorkian. And then there's this dude, it's her friend's boyfriend who she's got the hots for, and he's part of the reason as to why she goes knuckin' futs. He doesn't really do much outside of just be the object of her affection and then get his ass killed later when he tries to snitch on her for killing, or what he assumes is killing. And I'm really not gonna mention him all that much, so I'm just gonna call him lover boy. And there are other characters like kind of minute bullies and whatnot, but there's really only 2 that matter. And there's the bully I'm gonna call Micro Penis, and then there's her blonde best friend that I originally was gonna call her Face Domingo, but I'm actually just gonna call her Emily Lind from Babysitter 2 because she has no character motivation whatsoever. I will say that through all my grousing and complaining, the characters really aren't the biggest problem of this movie. Yeah, sure, it's kind of annoying that they only exist solely to just crap on the main character in order to instigate her high-impact sexual violence, but it's not really the worst thing ever. We've had worse movies in the past. I'll always point to the Rob Zombie Halloween remakes. So instead of doing all that and rambling on and ruining the parts where I talk about the character, I'm just going to talk about the stuff that I like.
Allegory, a story where the characters stand for abstract ideas. For example, good and evil.
So I made jokes earlier about Maria slash Aram just being Jekyll, Jekyll, Hyde, Jekyll, Hyde, Hyde, Jekyll, but to be honest with you, India Isley kind of LeBron carries this whole entire movie. I mean, her and John Isaacs as Dr. Jeffrey Kevorkian kind of do both, and in fact, watching interviews with the two of them, they seem to actually understand what the movie was supposed to be.
No, it's a horror film, right?
It's a, what is it?
No.
It's a thriller,
All right.
twisted, dark, macabre.
See, but
Right up your alley.
But yeah, she's great at playing both sides of the broken character that she's supposed to be. Yeah, I totally believe India Isley as a sweet girl who's just kind of odd and awkward and doesn't really know how to communicate with people. She basically plays what I imagine Billie Eilish is like in real life outside of like the red carpet events, kind of like a Kristen Stewart type. But when it comes to the switch over to being Aram and then being like this weird sultry seductress who just wants to bang dudes and kill people, she works as that too. It's a sure sign that, and it's unfortunate because they do it a lot in the modern era, that when you actually give an actress a role and something to do other than just be pretty girl, they actually can knock out a performance if they're actually good at what they do. And India Isley is. I mean, her mother is Olivia Hussey, so you'd surmise that, yeah, granted, it's not always the case that the kid gets any kind of acting skill, and I don't think Olivia Hussey is the greatest actor of all time, but yeah, she probably learned a little something from her mama, and it shows in here. Honestly, she reminds me a lot of, at least in essence, how I feel about Emily Lind as an actress. It's like, yeah, give her a role where she can actually flex her muscles and you're gonna get a good performance out of her. If you just make her some dumb girl, then you're just gonna get a dumb girl, and that's pretty much what India Isley does outside of movies like this. But I gotta give credit where credit is due. She actually knocks out the performance. Her, at least, is a 10 out of 10. I will say though that some of her actions really just don't make a lot of sense. You could argue that it's something that's based around the plot or maybe the character's motivation, and she is kind of a fractured human being in essence, but I don't really go for that. I mean, once again, it could be explained by the plot, but you know what's not explained by the plot?
Cause I was Jekyll, Jekyll, Hyde, Jekyll, Hyde, Hyde, Jekyll, 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 Hyde, Jekyll, Hyde.
Every other character outside of aging like milk Emily Lind exists solely for Aram to get revengeance on because they're horrible sacks of garbage from Rob Zombie's Halloween remake. Like, their reasoning for treating Aram slash Maria so bad is just because she allows them to, which yeah, makes sense in terms of him being an abused character. Totally understand that part. I mean, I went to school for psychology. I've read a book once or twice, you know? But the fact of the matter is, one of the things that's really annoying when I was talking about it slightly earlier without trying to roll into spoilers is that the revengeance that she gets ain't really all that plotted out too evenly, which is to just say that they're not weighted properly. Like, the crimes against her on one end don't get the same type of revengeance that they should on the other, because, and I'm just gonna mention it here, it doesn't really matter towards the overall plot. It happens near the end anyway, but she kills lover boy just for the sake of the fact that he found out that she killed babysitter 2 Emily Lind, or at least he thinks she did, and so she kills him to keep him from telling the cops. But other than that, he's done nothing wrong except for like sleep with her, and honestly just like desecrate the memory of his dead girlfriend by sleeping with her best friend almost immediately. And honestly, he deserved his death. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. He basically is just Cyclops from the X-Men comics. Like, oh, Jean Grey died, you know she's gonna come back because she always comes back, and you still decided to bang Psylocke anyway. That's your fault. But yeah, even mentioning it right here, babysitter 2 Emily Lind is just like a jerk to her the entire time, not a particularly good friend. And like, after the inciting incident that causes her to go all full Aram on her, all she's doing is like teaching her how to skate properly so she can skate in a competition or whatever. I really don't remember, but Emily Lind from Babysitter 2 is a good ice skater, so she's teaching Aram how to ice skate, and then she slips and falls, and she doesn't help her up. She just leaves her there in order to like teach her how to stand on her own 2 feet. It's not even necessarily the worst thing. It's bad for that particular type of character's mentality slash psychology because it would do something to break her psyche, but at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing you could do. And she responds to that by chasing her down in what is a awful ugly shot, and what is a kind of bland but like not really bad shot movie, but it's an awful shot where she just kind of like tricks her into crashing into a fountain, and then she breaks her neck and is dead, and she's just gone forever. But all through the course of the movie, all she really did was just not be a good friend. You could argue, once again, like I mentioned, some of the stuff can be explained by the plot. Aram just really wants her boyfriend, so she had to kill her to get her out. But really, the character already seems smart enough in order to kind of use subterfuge in order to get them to break up, and that's kind of what you expect to happen, because the character of Aram, when she does the switch over, is kind of a seductress, subversion of expectations, subterfuge using type of person where she'll trick and lie. I mean, she's even gone as far as to trick and lie the mother into thinking that the dad was cheating, or at least informing the mother that her dad was cheating. So why she just flat out kills a babysitter 2 Emily Lind, I'll never know. It really could have just been that she tricks them into breaking up, and then she finds out that, oh yeah, you tricked me into breaking up my boyfriend, and then she kills her. But no, that would make too much sense for the plot. And then lastly, this baby peen, which he bullies her throughout the course of the entire movie. Like, straight up, the inciting incident that causes her to break into full-blown Aram is that like prom, which by the way, can we talk about this in movies, bro? Because it's so annoying. Why does every prom that is exclusively held in like white or well-to-do neighborhoods, it's like 13 Reasons Why. Like as long as it's well-to-do light-skinned black people at the worst, then every single prom is held in some kind of impossible place. I don't know about y'all. Maybe I'm just old. Maybe I ain't with it no more. My prom was held at like a bingo hall that they judged up for us. It was called Lucarelli. It's not a bad prom either, but our DJ was like our one teacher's husband, and the hypest thing about that night was we found out her husband is black and he played good music. But yeah, their prom takes place on their ice skating rink they have in their school. Like I mean like NHL like sized hockey rink, one that is like absurdly big. I don't know, I never went to a hockey school. I've only ever gone to schools that for basketball, and I played basketball. Like I don't know anything about any of that stuff, but I don't remember any like NBA regulation basketball hoops around in those schools I went to. But that's just me. But yeah, when she gets to prom, he just drags her across the ice. Like that's it. Yeah, he bullies her, makes fun of her, calls her a loser and stuff like that. I think he hits her at some point, or like throws her up against a locker and threatens her when she embarrasses him. But how she gets her revenge is she grabs his penis at one point, and that embarrasses him, and then she kneecaps him. And that's it. But he's absolutely a character she should have just fucking killed. Why didn't she kill him? He's a bully and is the reason why she broke into being Aram in the first place. You could once again argue that it's plot. It's really her thanking him for helping her get free away from Maria, who she sees as weak. But honestly, there's no reason why the character wouldn't just kill him. Like she'd be able to get away with it pretty easy. Nobody seems to like this dude, and once again, there's no teachers or cops around that aren't off abusing their wives, apparently, at least as far as I can see in this movie, because it's the only two types of people that exist. But yeah, you have the guy there who is responsible for all the high impact sexual violence that you've committed up until this point, and you're just like, I'm gonna hit you in the knee, that'll teach you, don't do it again, you. What? Also, another kernel that just kind of sticks in my teeth, and once again, this may just be me because of the type of movies I watch. Like I watch a lot of bad B movies, if you haven't already figured out from this series in the first place, and a lot of cruddy movies where they just kind of use nudity to prop up the movie, like in the 80s and whatnot. But this movie's rated NC-17, and I personally don't see a reason as to why it needs to be. Yeah, sure, Jekyll and Hyde does full frontal, and that's whatever. Like it really isn't all that big of a deal though. I mean, there's technically a scene where she's like jilling off in the bathroom or something like that, but I mean, you don't see anything. And yeah, there's when she's topless in the tub, but once again, you don't actually see anything. When I think NC-17, I think movies like Short Bus, Nymphomaniac, Antichrist, and I have not seen Willem Dafoe get a nail hammered in his penis at any point in this movie, so I'm not counting it as NC-17. Also, for an NC-17 movie, like the kills are really lackluster. You think if you already have the rating where anyone under the age of 17 quite literally can't go in to see your movie or can't rent it or whatever it's supposed to be on the rule of that, you would kind of go for more kills, like more over the top kills. Maybe they didn't have it in the budget because they spent it all on the actors, which kind of makes sense. But for now, the kills are her friend falls over, breaks her neck, she like stabs loser boy, and then she slit John Isaac's throat for like being a pedo, and that's about it. Other than that, it's like I said, the full frontal. So I guess the movie gets an NC-17 because we looked at India Isley's bush, but whatever. It's not like it did 9/11, so who cares?
Who cares?
But a movie like this having an NC-17 but not really showing anything kind of screams to me studio involvement. Like there's this entire subplot of Dr. Epstein Kevorkian being really obsessed with Aram's looks and always constantly trying to modify her looks. He's a plastic surgeon and he wants to like give her a nose job, potentially give her a boob job. But yeah, there's this whole weird subplot where he's constantly trying to have her adjust her appearance and make her look prettier and things like that, because he's like a weird perfectionist and he wants everyone and everything to look perfect. And that's the whole reason why he's like cheating on aging like milk Emily Lind, is because she got old. So he thinks he carves up women's faces in order to make them look perfect, and then he bangs them. And throughout the course of the entire movie, you get these weird Mr. Diddles vibes where he constantly tells Aram to act more like an adult. He's like, it almost seems like throughout the course of the entire movie that he's grooming the perfect bride. And once again, there's no cops in this universe. You see him, and the reason why Maria has the Aram side to her is that she was born a twin, but he saw the twin had like a cleft lip or something like that, like some weird tiny minute imperfection, and he quite literally dumped her in the snow, which is why I said there's no cops, no therapists, no nothing, apparently no other adults besides him and his wife, because nobody found that baby dead and once the snow melted, because apparently they live in like a David Cage verse where it constantly snows. It didn't go prophecy, that's all I know. Yeah, you find out the dad's a cheater and a baby killer, and he has this weird sick obsession with physical beauty, and he's constantly trying to groom the daughter into doing things and getting plastic surgery and acting a certain way. You would think he was trying to groom and quite literally create the perfect wife, because he saw that his wife was getting old. He was like, we should have a kid so I could make me a new wife. That subplot is clearly be there. But why I say, like, when people say they like this, that they're missing what is actually could be an NC-17 gritty, interesting psychological character breakdown of a grooming relationship, it's like they just kind of fall flat on it. There's literally like a scene where I assumed watching it, they're in a red light movie theater, just a movie theater, and there are red lights, and dad's sitting there and he's kind of like enjoying himself. You see him opening his mouth a little bit and just kind of fidgeting a little, and I assumed, and once again, maybe it was cut out, maybe it was never meant to be there in the first place, I assumed she was jerking him off. Maybe that's fucked up to think about, but I mean, I assume that's what's happening. That's the vibes you're getting in the first place. He just spent the entire scene prior talking about a daddy-daughter date and telling her she should get a boob job and a nose lift and yada 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 yada. And it would make more sense with the plot as to the fact that Maria doesn't like to be touched. She's very socially awkward. She can't talk to boys. She has an interest in the one quote-unquote nice boy in town, because apparently they're all, once again, Ben Shapiro's, and she can't muster it up to talk to him without just flatly killing his girlfriend in order to get to him and quite literally giving into an alter ego. And she constantly bends to the loudest, most abusive person that is potentially around her at any given moment in time. You would think that that would be a thing, that would be part of the plot. That's why she's the way she is, and this is her fighting against that and then eventually killing her dad or whatever. You know, whatever. You could actually have a good story, an interesting psychological thriller where it's her versus her dad and her trying to expose the fact that he's a horrible human being, but everyone else is just ignoring it because she lives in a weird universe. And although, once again, all that stuff I just mentioned is really messed up, but it would actually go as to part of what is my other big concern with this movie, or one of my big annoyances, is that none of the actions make any sense. It would make sense for the plot that Dr. Epstein was doing some Epstein shit. But no, instead he's just Dr. Kevorkian with a little bit of Epstein vibes splashed on top for I don't know what. Have Aram/Maria's revenge kills actually matter to the plot or the people who she plots it out against? I mean, to be honest with you, like, she has this like weird kind of friendly connection with her mom, but her mom just once again seems like a passive dolt. Like, she doesn't really exist. I don't even really care to mention it. I don't know the actress's name. That's how little the character, I didn't feel like looking it up. But there doesn't seem to really be a reason why she wouldn't want revenge on the mom for just being passively sitting around while she was, one, technically allowed Aram in this case to just be thrown in the snow and never told anybody, and then two, allowed Maria to be abused for 17 years. Not for nothing, but that character kind of deserves to die just for being in a movie like this where she has no redeeming qualities. She just sits around and cries for most of the movie about the fact that John Isaacs is cheating on her and potentially molesting their daughter, but
Nobody cares.
Jekyll, Jekyll, Hyde, Jekyll, Hyde.
So if I'm going to draw back allegories to bags of popcorn, how would I best describe Look Away? Well, Look Away is actually a perfectly popped bag of popcorn. I mean, you put it in the microwave for the perfect amount of time, you take it out, it's not too hot, you crack it open, you can just smell the butter emanating off it, and you take a big handful and you get the perfect amount, I mean the perfect amount of salt and butter taste. And then about 3 bites in, you realize that the salt is coming off your disgusting hands, and you realize you've bought unsalted popcorn. The only problem is thanks to India Isley, it basically makes you 10-second Tom from 50 First Dates. Like, every couple bites you forget that there is no salt to this popcorn. And by that I mean is this movie is heavily, and I mean heavily, carried by India Isley. She is the absolute best performer in the entire thing. And yeah, John Isaacs does okay as Jeffrey Epstein Kevorkian, but other than that, there's not really much else going on. The thing of it is that the movie is smart enough to focus itself around India Isley, whereas in the family's case, it didn't focus itself around the family, which, you know, i.e. Robert De Niro. In this movie's case, it did. It knew it had a good actress in it, it knew she was acting her part out well, and it just decided to focus on her. The other things that are going on around outside of it are just kind of really dumb, plot convenience heavy, and she exists in Ben Shapiro's sweet, beautiful womb of a life, which is ironically Abby Shapiro's womb, and so it winds up falling flat. I want to give it a lot more credit, and honestly, if it just had a couple minor tweaks, it would be not perfect, but pretty close, solid B movie. I could probably give it a 7 or an 8. Its main problem really is that it doesn't go for it. You already have a character that is an emotionally abused, desperate, almost psychopathic young girl who is in a universe where no one seems to care about her mental health. Why not just go for it? Or why not just have your villains be flat out villains? At this point, it seems like to me, and I don't know for sure, and I have no interest in really looking it up, but listening to interviews of India Isley and John Isaacs, it kind of sounds like they thought the movie was going to be something different, and I'm imagining it was tons of studio involvement, that they probably saw a scene of John Isaacs piping the ever-loving shit out of India Isley, and then we're like, oh, we didn't know you were going to make a movie like that. No, when I said short bus, I meant the Magic School Bus, and then they decided to change it. But I mean, I'd love to see Indy Isley and other things like this. I could do without John Isaacs just because I'm sick of his face. They constantly always put him in stuff as that white guy. But Indy Isley is an actress who more commonly is in like schlock, garbage, trash, straight to VOD type stuff. But this is one of those things where you're like, oh man, a little bit of expansion, maybe a bigger studio or something like that, and maybe a halfway competent writer, and you can actually make something pretty decent. But I gotta keep it honest, you know, it's just that it's a movie that is really, for the most part, unlike The Family, which was like 30% done, it's 50% done. The main focus of the movie is the main character, and she is a whole character, whereas everyone else seems to just kind of be like a third a character. They're kind of just a trope put on paper, and except for John Isaacs, who's really just vaguely the worst person ever, at least a child murderer. So I mean, if I'm gonna keep it to the cook time score and keep it fair, I gotta give this movie a solid 5 minutes and 30 seconds, which is usually about the approximate amount of time you should typically pop a bag of popcorn, but that extra 30 seconds is usually where you start to burn it. I'm looking at you, babysitter 2 Emily Lind. Hey yo, what up? Firstly, just a few housekeeping things. I know I don't normally do an outro, at least not ones where I talk. I think I did one in an old video, probably my Rust video, I think. But just a few housekeeping things. Firstly, just thank you to anybody that watches these, you know, to my friends that watch these and click thumbs up, even if it's out of pity. I definitely do appreciate y'all. You know, every single new viewer definitely does. It's an opportunity to open the door to, you know, the next step is, you know, some level of relevancy in YouTube. You know, each view is the next step up, so I always appreciate that, you know. And I kind of always hate the cheesy thing in the beginning where people will be asking for likes and all that right in the beginning. It's like, man, let me watch the video, decide if I like it before I like it, you know, like and remind me at the end, just like you like. And even honestly, if the content was fire enough, I'm gonna remember to like it. Not to say, you know, people can't do that. I'm rambling. But yeah, I normally don't like doing those in the beginning of the video, or like having them in the beginning of the video. It's just a personal thing, but you know, if you do, whatever. But housekeeping things. One, as you can already tell, I've broken my rules on length of videos on the second review. It's shout out to any of the 5 people that watched the first one. There'll probably be at least a handful more that I watched this because the movie's a little more relevant, but definitely wanted to oh man, now I just like lost my train of thought. Yeah, no, I'm not, none of this is scripted, I'm just kind of talking. But yeah, I obviously broke the rules on the length of the videos, because I always say I want these reviews to be like 15 minutes or less type stuff, but I had a fair amount to say about this one. I will say, like I said, I recorded it. I like to crack it down while I was already kind of irritated. It's my hot water heater burst, which had since gotten fixed, but you know, that's the whole thing. If you care, I don't think anyone cares. But yeah, I definitely surpassed the 15-minute mark, and I only mention that because first thing of order, as housekeeping towards the videos, I am actually going to be working on the next one this weekend. It's actually a movie I'm excited to review, so don't expect it to take a JonTron amount of time in between this one and the next. Maybe at most like a month. I edit these while I'm working, simply because work does not always, like I'm always on paying attention, but I only have to work when I have to work. So it's not like I'm just not that I'm sitting around with tons of free time, but when I do have gaps of free time, I go through and edit these to cut down on the amount of time I have to do it on the weekends, because I usually have some other stuff to do. So yeah, I usually edit these intermediately in between while working, and then record them in the middle of the night while most people are asleep. It's 11 o'clock right now while I'm recording this outro here. But yeah, that movie review, I'm not going to spoil it. It'll probably be a little bit longer, probably be a little bit more of a critical analysis of the movie. Is going to be a little bit more breakdown. As you can tell, the first two is just kind of madman's ramblings. I'm going to try to steer clear of that for this one, but this was also one that I don't want to say I had more interest in doing. Not to say I didn't have it for these two, but this movie that I'm working on now has some interesting things in it that I really wanted to talk about. This was with this movie, as you can tell if you watched the entire review, was kind of a disappointment to a certain extent. This is the next one that I'm talking about. Could be something more, so I'm kind of interested to really talk about that. And then after that, probably gonna do a bunch of smaller ones. Keep those ones. Try to keep them under the 15-minute mark. Maybe like 2 or 3 of those. Because then after that, the one I have written here that I was gonna do after this one that I'm working on now, wound up bungling the first and the second movie together into one review. So now I'm gonna iron out the rough edges of that, and that review definitely won't be 20 minutes. Probably gonna be 30 at least, maybe 40. I tend to like ramble, if you couldn't tell even by listening to this. But other than that, like I said, man, just truly do appreciate everybody who watches these and leaves a thumbs up. So each one of those thumbs up is just another chance for someone else to see, and hopefully one more step to success, whatever DJ Khaled says. I don't know. But I'm gonna leave you guys with that. Be good to yourselves and be good to each other. Peace.